Hello, welcome observers to the RPL Live for 6/8/2016. We are just on the verge of Eternal Masters launching in your Earth on Friday, 2 days from now. Today we have a special kind of guest for you. As you can see by our lab cam 2, we've got specific cards laid out for you. These will be discussed and more tonight as part of the festivities we have going on for tonight's 2-hour stream. As always, you can catch me every Wednesday here on twitch.tv/RiptideProLab. We will be doing the magic story of the week, dramatic reading. We will also be talking about whatever happens to be going on during that week in magic, be it a release or some sort of professional gathering or something like that happens, a Grand Prix or something of the sort. Let me get through some of my earlier stuff today, and then we will go through and do the dramatic reading. I know a lot of people have seen it on Reddit, that I've made my post there and or Twitch. I will be doing a dramatic reading of the magic story done by Kimberly J, Kreines, the Archmage of Goldnight. I know a lot of people enjoyed the story coming back for Innistrad and us. Here, too, at the lab, we have known for some time where the story has been able to be going, and we're glad to see other people get there, too. Just in the future, we'll be able to talk more about the way things have been going on and such. So, let me get to the next topic we're going to talk about. I want to actually say thank you to our first follower, because we have only been live twice. So, having a first follower is actually, a really good thing, especially after only two episodes. And our first follower that we had was Shrekstoff. So, thank you, Shrekstoff, for following us. You're part of the lab team now in spirit, and we really appreciate it. So, anybody else, hit that follow button. If we ever get a subscribe button, that'll be there too. But for now, making sure you're a part of us and joining us with the lab, all we really count on. We really thank everybody for all their contributions, whether or not they watch or follow. So anyway, let us get to the next part that I wanted to talk about, which is Eternal Masters. We'll only go over that just a little bit. I'm pretty sure you've heard tons of stuff about Eternal Masters already. Basically, I want to update you with what is going on with that in terms of where I stand. I know you have seen possibly some box openings of Eternal Masters on the YouTube. I will actually be getting my own box sent to me directly from your Earth to Dominaria on Friday. I'll open it. I'll do my own open box where I'll show you all the rares and foils that I open and maybe some other cards of note. I don't know. I'll actually have one of my assistants on hand to help me open it. 16, I believe, is her name. She'll actually be there assisting with the camera work and all of that to make sure that goes through. I mean, because when you have this lab desk, it's kind of, messy, and you have to be able to make sure it looks good. So we're going to make sure that looks good. So, the next thing on my list to talk about today, before I get into some other stuff like the dramatic reading and so forth, is... Oh, and for the Eternal Masters box, you will definitely see that video up either on the Friday or the Saturday. I will also have the weekend water cooler as well. That will also be up. So I'll make sure to have both of those for you. So lots of good content for this weekend on the YouTube channel. Make sure to stay tuned for that. Okay, so let us get to the Eldritch Moon story discussion. Yes. So, I know other people, you may be watching and go to, say, some other Twitch channels to watch Magic the Gathering Online, but that's not all you can talk about Magic the Gathering. Here at the RIPTIDE Project Laboratory, we like to talk about the story and how it ties into the cards, which is why I have the cards laid out in front of you here on LabCam 2. Now you notice the 4 cards that I have laid out in front of me are Nahiri the Harbinger, Jason Raveler of Secrets, Soren Grim Nemesis, and Sigarda Heron's Grace. If you can look and see by our shiny little revolving logo here, revolving news story post, I'm sorry, we are actually talking about the different aspects of each character and what it means for Eldritch Moon going forward. Excuse me. So, let's go with the first topic we've got, Nahiri. Now, we haven't actually seen her specifically in the story so far, whereas Nahiri is kind of in the background. She's not in the foreground. Soren is still looking for her. At the end of Shadows over Innistrad, it is just Soren saving Jace and Tamio, and then that's it. And excluding today's story is the only extra story that we've gotten so far on the actual story path that it is going. So, my question to you, dear observer, can Nahiri be saved? That is the absolute question that is probably on many people's minds. For this lowly lab tech, I do believe she can be saved. Why? Because I believe there is not a white-red planeswalker out there that we can truly get behind, and having some character development for her where she almost accidentally screws up an entire plane means a lot. And by doing so, I believe she will be able to get better understanding of Soren and herself and her powers, perhaps. And there are many different things you can come out of that by doing so, which is she can enhance her powers. She can, perhaps if she's pulling an Emrakul, store it in the moon. Who knows? All we know for sure is that with Nahiri, there is going to have to be some sort of breaking of the mind control, or it will end up in tragedy. And that is something RPL we just don't want. So, moving on. Jace, the Mind Sculpted. That is actually something that we really are still concerned with here. Specifically that we don't know whether or not Jace is going to be fine after his madness that he had basically took a glimpse of. And how we know he's fine or not, we just don't know. The story is actually unclear. Jace had some issues, then Tamio helped him out, but with Planeswalkers, and especially with madness, it's not ever as clear as it always seems to be, especially with madness. Next, Soren. Being a grim nemesis, he obviously has to have a nemesis to go after, and that of course is Nahiri. But after Avacyn's destruction, what does he do now? There are many different things that he has to consider. His plane is now under fire by everything that could have been pushed back, drawn back, just totally held back by Avacyn, and now he has to worry about it. That is going to concern him. That may concern him maybe more so than Nahiri herself, depending on what actually Nahiri summons. And you may see Soren possibly die out of this. You may see him sacrifice himself to become either the protector of the plane in spirit, or he may give all of his power to Sigarda and make Sigarda the new Avacyn, which leads me into my next topic, Sigarda. As you can see, Sigarda, Heron's Grace, is the only angel out of all of them to not have anything happen to her. Meaning, she is the only angel the entire plane can count on for protection. With Sigarda, and this is my personal prediction for what's going to happen in Eldritch Moon, I believe that Soren is going to empower her with his Planeswalker abilities, maybe even sacrificing his life, to shut out Emrakul or what else is going to attempt to enter into Innistrad. This will be a very tragic and actually unique setup for Soren. And I do believe that when it is done, Nahiri will probably come out of it saying, I cannot believe that I have done this, and Soren had to sacrifice himself, and she will want to atone. Or, all hell will just break loose, and the entire plane will be on the verge of the brink of destruction. Who knows? It's not entirely clear. Now, after getting through that discussion, let me take a quick drink here. I'm not sponsored by anyone. Now we can move into the dramatic reading that I'm sure all of you here are ready and willing to listen to. If I get through the dramatic reading fast enough by the end, maybe if it takes like just an hour or so, I will do some Magic the Gathering Online. I have some sealed ready to go. I'm actually planning on doing some of that streaming so that way you can see me access the Magic the Gathering servers from here so that way you can watch me play and make dumb choices. I'm not that particularly amazing at the game. I mean, I did attempt to do a top 16 in a states tournament, but who knows, right? Anyway, let me get to the dramatic reading. And I will set up the specific image that I have set up for that. If you give me just one moment. So that way when people view the channel, they can see that it is going on. I hope the stream sound is good. I actually did quite a bit of testing to make sure that it would come through wonderfully. I hope you have been enjoying my previous RIPTIDE Pro Lab videos that I've been putting up. I have yes, that is right. I did a custom card video not too long ago. I hope everyone enjoyed that. Those videos will also be coming every week with that thread. So content is always on the way, observers. You can make sure to get content from me. Alright, so, the dramatic reading. Are you ready? I have it set up. The Archmage of Goldnight. I hope everyone enjoys this dramatic reading. I will be that's a little bit different. I will be affecting voices so that way it sounds more dynamic, more interesting. I will also be putting on some music to go with it so that way the music will be punctuating my words so you can get into the mood. But if you have not read the story itself, you can follow along at Magic Story on the Magic the Gathering website. Through there, you can see all the previous stories that have been written for Shadows of Innistrad. But today will be the Archmage of Goldnight. And give me just a moment while I pick the music to go with the opening to the story. Alright. Start that one over. Music fine, everybody can hear it. The Archmage of Goldnight by Kimberly J. Kreines. Previous story. I am Avison. The world of Innistrad has been descending into madness for some time now. From cultists to Cathars, no mind is safe. Even angels have fallen prey. Avacyn herself went mad, transforming from protector to monster and wreaking unimaginable devastation upon even the most faithful in her church. Then she was destroyed. With its angelic protector gone, Innistrad was exposed to overwhelming forces of darkness and evil. Now, the few on the plane who have not yet lost their minds are left to wonder if this is the end. As the world tilts off balance, beginning its final descent, the people pray for anything or anyone, powerful enough, good enough, to stand in Avacyn's place to protect them from the maddening darkness. Try to select the next correct music. Give me just a moment. Nope, that was the same one. There we go. Okay. Present day. The scent of angel's blood. There was nothing like it in all the multiverse. A biting bouquet, sweet and brackish, tinged with spice and sharp with power. The aroma met Arlen's wide wolf nostrils as she raced up the sheer incline of a gorge toward the town of Lamholt, under siege. She snarled at the smell of it, cursing. She hadn't been fast enough. She should have been the one to draw the blood, to fell the angel, to earn its wrath. She was the protector of the Ulvenwall. Faster. She had witnessed the mad angel's descent on Lamholt from afar. The divine being had dived down past the rooftops and steeples. Cries of horror and flashes of light had followed. Moments later, the angel had surfaced, wings bloody and sword aflame, only to plunge in once more. Though Arlen hadn't seen all that had happened beyond the rooftops, she could imagine it well enough. There was only so much that mad angels did. They were broken, inconsolable, shrieking and crying of Avacyn's death as they careened through the sky. It seemed impossible that the angel was truly gone, but there was no denying the hole in the fabric of Innistrad. A hole that was filling rapidly with wails of innocence, roars of flames, and cackling of corrupted beings. The desperate trumpet of a Cathar's horn, a Goldnight's she knew the tenor, spurred Arlen on. She summoned strength from the forest, pumping the thick muscles of her legs, pushing herself up the slope. Faster. But she feared it was already too late. Blood had been shed, and not just angelic. Human blood, too. The Cathars. Arlen could picture them. Holy weapons raised, magical invocations on their lips, but they would not be blessed with the power they prayed for. Avacyn was not there to answer their prayers. Years ago, Arlen Cord, in being here tonight, you have answered the call of the Holy Protector Avacyn. There is no greater blessing than that which you are about to receive. Please step forward. Archmage Reeves stood on the altar of Goldnight, gesturing for Arlen to join him in Archmage Rampage. Sorry, I'm interchanging Archmage and Archmage. I will use Archmage from this point on for every Archmage in there. Reeves didn't look, the Archmages could have no idea how much this moment meant to Arlen. They would never understand fully. She couldn't tell them. It was so much more than the Archangel's sacrament, extraordinary though that may be. To her, it was freedom. But if she were to explain that to the holy men before her, it would be all over. Arlen rose from her bent position of supplication and ascended the stairs to meet the two Archmages. Oh, hey! Gnome's Paladin. Gome's Paladin, sorry. Thanks for following. Sorry I interrupted. It's really loud. I need to turn it down in my headphones. But let me get back to it. Reeves didn't look at her, but Rembert shifted his gaze, a smile on his thin lips. Arlen returned the smile as best she could, her lips trembling. She fixed her eyes on the familiar sights around her in an attempt to quell the alternating swells of anxiety and anticipation that surged through her. The chapel at Elgod grounds was small but far from simple. The altars shone with golden detail bearing the symbol of Avacyn. Thick white fabrics were draped from the ceiling on all sides, creating the feeling of a protected alcove, which was filling with clouds of incense, peaceful yet powerful. In the name of Avacyn, and with the power vested in me by her holy church, I confer upon you this blessing. Archmage Reeves began to chant. Arlen knew the words well. She had listened to this prayer countless times over the past years as the sole Cathar who had been present in every Archmage's ceremony and blessing. She had watched those who had gone before her stand on this very altar and receive the highest sacrament. Each time, she had wondered if it would ever be her. Each time, from her seat in the pew nearest the altar, she had doubted herself. And each time, from the same seat, she had reminded herself to believe in the power of Avacyn. Now, here she was. Archmage Reeves held up the thick gold chain with the shining medallion, the Mantle of Goldnight. Arlen Cord, I present to you this mantle, the symbol of Avacyn's endless love and ceaseless protection. At the correct moment, Arlen bowed her head, and Reeves slipped the chain around her neck. The medallion was heavier than she had imagined. She could feel the weight of it on her chest, and she could sense its holy power. It was the power she needed, the power she had come here seeking. Light, goodness, truth. She knew she was supposed to stand still, unmoving for the duration of the ceremony, yet she couldn't stop herself from touching it, allowing it to rest in her palm, running her fingers around its circumference. It was beautiful and pure, and now it was hers. Archmage Rembert's hand clasped her shoulder. You must know how proud I am, he whispered as Reeves continued to chant. A swell of emotion collected in Arlen's throat, preventing her from responding, but she met Rembert's eyes, willing him to see her gratitude in her gaze. He had been her constant over the years, a mentor who had pushed her, been patient with her, and helped her to hone her strengths. He knew her better than anyone, and yet, even he did not know the truth. Arlen abruptly averted her gaze from his. How many times had she wanted to tell him? But she could not. If he knew the truth about her, about what she was, his hand would be forced against her. The clot of emotions in her throat loosed itself and seeped down into her chest, turning into an icy cold guilt. Arlen shrunk from it. She had promised herself that she would not feel this guilt any longer. Not after tonight. But it wasn't as easy to dismiss as she wished it were. Images of her wards, hundreds of them that she had crafted against the curse of lycanthropy, flashed across her mind. The feeling of the moonlight on her skin, the howls she heard late at night. She had kept the secret all this time, from all of them. She had to. A lycanthrope cannot be an Archmage of Goldnight, and Arlen had to become an Archmage of Goldnight. It was this blessing that would save her from her curse. The blessing of Avacyn was stronger than the evil inside her. It would repress the savagery. All these years, this is what she had been working for. After tonight, she would be able to trust herself. Final and absolute. She breathed out a breath it seemed she had been holding for years. She looked back up at Rembert and held his gaze as Reeves completed the chant of Goldnight. And now we pray together. Reeves nodded to Arlen, and she joined him as he began the final prayer. Dear Avacyn, protector of all, Holy One who grants us power, we... The actual it's not actually speculation. Wizards has actually gone on the record saying that the Werewolf Legendary in Eldritch Moon will be coming. They wanted to put it into Shadows over Innistrad, but they weren't able to because Arlene Cord took that spot. Let me get a quick drink and we'll right back to the story. It's an attack! The shout sliced through the incense-laden air, and the thick white drapes billowed, exposing the altar to a gust of cold wind that came through the door. Devils in Havengul! Hordes of them! Trying to get something interesting. Here we go. More upbeat sounding music for this. It was Cathar Layton who was shouting, running up the aisle toward the altar, his sword raised. The flight of Goldnight sent for you. He stumbled up the steps to Reeves. They asked for the aid of the Archmages. Then we ride! Reeves shrugged off the ceremonial robe he was wearing, already following Layton back down the aisle. Rembert followed suit. Archmage Cord, your blade! Arlen started. That was her. He was calling her an Archmage. But the prayer, we didn't finish. She knew it was a foolish thing to say in such a moment, but her mind was reeling, her emotions raw. All this time she had been anticipating this moment, and now it was as though it had been left dangling as a thread from a riding cloak, just as likely to be torn away to unravel the rest of the cloak. She needed to know it was done. She needed to know she was finally wholly an Archmage. Rembert opened his mouth as though to chide her, but then his gaze softened as he met her eyes. He paused at the door. You asked me again before this night began if I believed you were ready to become an Archmage of Goldnight. Arlen nodded. I did. And what I said then remains true now. In my mind, you have been an Archmage since you first arrived. Never have I seen a brighter, more promising student. Now you have a name which you have always had in heart. You are one of the Goldnight, Arlen Cord, bound by the sacrament that holds us together, bound to the angel and to each other, always. Completed ceremony or no, it is official. Arlen attempted a smile. All right. It was official. She could live with that. Though she wished she felt it more strongly. She had imagined that in the moment she would feel a rush of power and freedom. And now the Goldnight have been called to ride. Rembert opened the door. We must go. Yes, we must. Arlen hurried down the aisle. Rembert cleared his throat as they hastened through the door. Of course. I would be remiss if I didn't do the duty of the church and ensure the final prayer is complete. Oh? Arlen looked to the Archmage. Say it with me as we go. Dear Avacyn, protector of all, Rembert began. Together they completed the final prayer to Avacyn, calling the words out between heaving breaths of biting cold air as they raced across Elgod grounds, toward the stables. By the time she climbed onto her horse, Arlen was an Archmage. She felt it in her soul. They found the town of Havengul ablaze. As Layton had warned, hordes of wicked devils hung from every bough, swung from the rafters, and danced in the streets. A group of dozen or so of the fiends cavorted across the town's highest rooftops, launching fireballs at anything that was not already burning, or more, just to add to the flames. One perched on an old man's head, slashing at his face from above with his needle-like fingers, while two others hung from the man's hands to prevent him from swatting the first away. Another of the devils toyed with a young man who was barely conscious, scraping foul designs into his skin with its dirt-encrusted nails, letting just enough blood to keep him alive while causing just enough pain that he wished he was not. Their laughter rang out above the crackling flames, their lungs unaffected by the choking smoke that had driven so many of the townsfolk to their knees. Arlen hated them instantly. Flight Goldnight had arrived just before the cavalry, and now the Archmages and Cathars joined the battle begun by the Angels. Their first priority was to establish a sanctuary. An angel, Frey Dahlia, blessed a small church, casting a spell of protection over it, and under Rembert's orders, Arlen and the others began shuttling victims to safety. They were to save the innocents first, and when that was through, deal with the wicked. Arlen crouched next to the burning remains of an upturned carriage, reaching underneath its hot wooden body for the unwilling hand of a small boy. Another angel, Layli, hovered above, holding at bay a mass of devils that threatened to leap down from a nearby rooftop. "They won't be deterred much longer," Olele called down to Arlen. The angel impaled one of the devils with her spear, but at the same time, 4 more jumped up to grab her weapon, engaging in a vicious tug of war. Arlen extended her fingers farther toward the boy. She had to hurry. "Give me your hand," she begged. The child shook his head. The carriage creaked above him. "The devils, they'll get me with their fire if I go out there." Arlen didn't want to say Arlen didn't want to say that if he didn't come out, he would meet a fiery death all the same. She didn't want to frighten him any more than he was. "I know you're scared," she said, "but you don't have to be. I'll protect you, and so will that angel up there." She reached again for his hand, but still the boy cowered. "But you are just 2, and there are so many devils." He peered up through a slit in the wood as a fiery board broke away from the body of the carriage and crashed to the ground at Arlen's side. They were running out of time, but Arlen could not make the boy trust her, so she turned to her faith. "Do you know of Avacyn?" she asked. He nodded. "Then you must know that she is more than I could ever be, more than even that holy angel could ever be. Avacyn will help you if we cannot." The boy considered Arlen's words. She could not tell what was going on behind his wide brown eyes. All she could do was hope that she had convinced him. "Say the prayer with me," she urged. "Together we'll ask for Avacyn's aid." She chose the most familiar of the prayers she knew, hoping that he would know it too. "Dear Avacyn, we pray to you now in our time of need. We ask that you—" "How do you know?" the boy interrupted the prayer. "How do you know she'll help?" He pressed. "And I want a serious answer, not just something you say to make me come out. I know how adults work, and I'm not going to go out there with the devils just because you say so." It was Arlen's turn to consider the child. She could hear Olele's wings beating furiously above them and feel the heat of the devil's flames. But more pressure came from his stare than from the other 2 combined. "I will give you the most serious answer I know," she said. "I know that Avacyn will help if you pray because she has helped me. Something very bad happened to me once, and I was afraid I was alone. But then I learned I was not. Avacyn saved me." The carriage above them tilted. "Hurry, Archmage Cord!" Olele called from above. "Give me your hand, please." Arlen stretched as far as she could manage, the tips of her fingers coming just short of the boy's elbow. "You're an Archmage?" The boy's expression changed from one of doubt to awe. "I am." Arlen nodded down to the medallion that hung around her neck as she braced her back against the hot, sagging wood. "That's something," the boy said. "All right." He moved cautiously and ever so slowly. Arlen held her breath as his small hand reached for hers. The carriage groaned above them like a beast. Arlen began her own prayer. "Dear Avacyn, give me the strength to save this innocent child." She felt the mantle of the Archmage flare to life against her chest. The blessing of Avacyn stirred deep within her. Aloud she prayed for the boy. "Protector of our world, please see us safely to your sanctuary." The stirring became an overwhelming flood of holy power. As the boy's hand touched hers, Arlen yanked him out from under the carriage with a divine might that set them both rolling across the ground just as the carriage collapsed. The angel Olele dove, shielding Arlen and the boy from the fiery shards of wood and the attacks launched by the devils. The boy wailed. "We're all right." Arlen buried her nose in the boy's matted hair, breathing in the scent of his life. "You're all right." She rocked him, stroking his face. "I'm going to get you to the church now." She lifted her hand from his head and her breath caught in her throat. Her fingers had come away covered with blood. Her heart postponed its next beat. It refused to sustain her life until she knew that the boy would live. She searched his head for the source of blood, searched his shoulders, his neck. Nothing. But there was more blood, and then more of it. A drop of red fell on Arlen's own hand. She looked up. Olele was lurching through the sky with a devil on her back. It clawed at her hair with its needle fingers. The second devil jumped on her leg and a third on her shoulder. All dug their wicked hands into her pure flesh. The angel screamed. Arlen had never seen an angel bleed. It was as though it was she who had been sliced across the face, as though it was her cry of agony that echoed through the town. A drop of blood landed on Arlen's cheek. She could smell it. The angel's blood smelled of the trees of the woods, the air of the heavens, and the waters of the sea. It was a heady aroma, heavy with holy power. It did not belong outside of the angel's body. She moved to help, calling to the angel in desperation. "Olele!" But then she remembered the boy, crouched in the crook of her arm. She looked down to him. Angel's blood was smeared across his face. "Save the child first, Archmage Cord!" Olele's voice boomed from overhead. It was a command, followed by a softer plea. "Arlen, please, save the child first." It was all Arlen could do to avert her eyes from the sight of the devils tearing into the angel's skin. If she watched a moment longer, she would not be able to heed Olele's command. She offered her hand again to the boy. "Come with me." This time, he didn't hesitate. He let her guide him through the center of Havengold, running toward the sanctuary, his tiny voice intoning as they went. "Dear Avacyn, please help that angel. Stop the devils from making her bleed. They're hurting her." Of course, being a long story, I have to take several breaks to ensure that my voice doesn't give out, and also that I don't expire from not breathing. So, just giving you just a moment while I get myself back together. We have finished the current part of the story that was in the past, and now we return to present day. "In the name of Avacyn, the fallen protector, I will strike you down!" The wail of a mad angel's voice rang out as Arlen crested the gorge. She plowed ahead only to skid to a stop, claws digging into the forest floor as a clearing opened up before her. The mad angel was on the ground in the center of the ring of trees. Arlen stayed low in the brush. Remaining undetected would give her the advantage. She peered through the branches, breathing in great mouthfuls of air laced with the angel's blood. The angel was bound with rope, an arrow protruding from her gut, wings bloody. Cathars surrounded her on all sides, their weapons poised. In spite of all of it, the angel was the one with the upper hand. She was a being of unfathomable power, made all the more potent in her madness. "Impure!" the angel shrieked at the Cathars. "All of you are impure!" Her sword flashed with fiery magic as she twisted against the ropes. She screamed, a sound of spiteful rage that made Arlen raise her hackles. Arlen's instincts told her to protect the Cathars. Baring her teeth, she stalked through the brush, pacing. There was only so long she would wait for an opening before striking. "Hold her fast," a familiar voice gave Arlen pause. Her ears swiveled. "Don't let up on those ropes!" Arlen's legs were stiff. It couldn't be. But there was no mistaking the Archmage as he stormed around from behind the angel, barking orders to the other Cathars. "Archers, take aim!" Though Rembert's face was red from effort and crusted in dirt, the 3 long, white scars that ran down his cheek and down his jaw shone in the moonlight. Arlen's stomach turned at the sight, at the memory. She backed into the thicker trees, her tail down. Her hind paw landed on a branch. If she had not been so unsteadied by the sight of Rembert, her wild instincts would have taken over, guiding her body, shifting her balance. But in this moment she was more human than wild, and her human mind was reeling, distracted, too slow. Her branch snapped, and so too did the angel's head, spinning round, her gaze fixing directly on the woods where Arlen was concealed. An unsettling smile spread across her face, and the angel lifted her hand. "A monster!" she pointed at Arlen. "There in the trees, a monster!" A handful of the Cathars turned to look, Rambert included. He picked the werewolf out of the trees before the others. He knew what he was looking for. His eyes locked with Arlen's, and he lifted his hand to his face, fingers tracing the longest of the scars. A tremor ran up Arlen's spine. "Oi! Werewolf!" another of the Cathars cried, rousing Arlen from the trance of the past. The holy men and women stepped back reflexively from the werewolf, closer to the angel. No! Arlen wanted to cry out, but it would only be a growl, and it would only make it worse. It was already worse. That moment of lapsed vigilance was all the angel needed. In a display of mad strength, she spread her wings with enough force to cast off the ropes that bound her. "Stop her! Hold the ropes!" The Cathars cried out, but too late. The angel took flight. Hovering in the air above, she tore the arrow from her gut and hurled it down at the youngest of the Cathars. "Impure! I strike you down!" Arlen keened as the young woman fell to the ground, lifeless. Her wild nature took over, and she lunged at the angel, jaws open, only to close around a thick branch. Rambert was wielding the branch as a weapon against her. He yanked it back and wound up to swing again. Arlen dodged, her hindquarters coming out from under her as she slipped on the mud of the clearing, slick with the angel's blood. She scrambled back to her feet but yelped as Rambert's third swing caught her tail. "Get her!" Rambert cried to the other Cathars. He swung again at Arlen as she ducked behind the cover of a broken stump. "Get the monster!" Blades slashed and arrows flew, some at the angel and some at Arlen. "Stop!" She wanted to tell Rambert to stop. She wanted to tell him she was no longer the monster he had known. In truth, she had never been. After this segment, we return to the past of Arlencord years ago. "Take him! Take the boy!" Archmage Arlencord thrust the small child into Rembert's outstretched arms. She didn't wait to see them retreat into the safety of the sanctuary before turning to race back down the steps, her blade drawn. Her vision blurred with the smoke from the devil's fires, but not so much that she couldn't make out the horror before her. There were at least a dozen devils hanging from Eulalie, pulling at her hair, plucking out her feathers, and slicing through her skin. "No!" Arlen cried. "Get away!" The devils cackled and launched fiery spells down at Arlen. She deflected the fire with her blade and pressed forward, closer. "I will make you cease your laughing!" As though her words had been the punchline of a terrible joke. The fiends succumbed to vicious howls, their bony legs shaking with mirth. The one on Eulalie's head pointed to Arlen and cried out, a shriek that the others seemed to take as a command. In unison, they heaved back, yanking on the angel's wings, sending Eulalie plummeting to the ground. They rioted with glee as she crashed down, tumbling across the dirt, unable to take flight again. Arlen charged at them, channeling all of her might, all of the divine power she could reach into her blade. She prayed as she did. "Avacyn, guide me. Give me your holy power. If there was ever a time, I need it now." She raged through the fire the devil spat at her, unafraid to burn. Her sword struck one straight through the chest. She pulled it out and lashed at another, then a third. But before she could strike again, a dozen devils rained down from above, having jumped from the rooftops. Arlen barely had time to intone a silent prayer. "Avacyn, there are too many, help me!" She was grabbed from behind with needle-like fingers that tore through her jacket. She spun around, slicing for the devil, but it had attached itself to her back. She felt the weight of another join it, and then third. Tails lashed around her neck, scorching hot. Nails latched on into her shoulders and back, pulling her down. Laughter rang sharp in her ears as she was dragged to the ground. Avison, please. There was no response. The pain was great, but it was worse to see the devil... Sorry. The pain was great, but it was worse to see the angel before her, struggling against the suffocating horde. Between the blood and the devils, there was only red where the pure white of Eulalie had once been. No! Arlen fought to get up, but she too was being buried by the fiends. Tears or blood streaked down her cheeks. Arlen did not know. This wasn't right. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. She was an Archmage of Avison. Avison! Arlen fought to the scratching and biting, reaching for the medallion around her neck. Her fingers closed around the mantle of the Archmage of Goldnight. Avison, please come to my aid. She waited, opening herself to the power of the Protector. She needed power to save the angel. But there was nothing. From just beyond Arlen's reach, Eulalie cried out, a burst of sound released. Finally, after she had resisted the pain for so long, the angel's cry was laced with agony so great that it ripped the night in two. Arlen felt the power of the pain in Eulalie's cry, and just like the night, she came apart. The werewolf surged at the devil's jaws, snapping, clenching around the throat of the nearest fiend, ripping its head from its body, launching it across the courtyard. More. Claws slashing through chests, tearing off tails, swiping bodies out of sight. More. Crunching through bones, seizing on flesh, piercing spines, carcasses flew. More. Feathers. The werewolf's maw closed on feathers. The taste of angel's blood, intoxicating, warm ambrosia, perfect. Shock shone in the angel's eyes. She pulled up away, but not fast enough. The werewolf's claws struck the skin of the angel's leg, scraping down the angel's calf and hooking into place. The pleasure of fouling that perfect skin was unmatched. The werewolf pulled the angel back to the ground and laid into its flesh with teeth. Get off! The werewolf turned and sounded a voice. There was a human there. A man who raised his sword. The werewolf slit his gut straight down the center. Blood and organs spilled out. More. The werewolf turned back to the angel, but more humans closed in. The werewolf swiped at the blade of a swinging sword, knocking the sword out of the air, then hacked at the arm that wielded it, breaking it from the body. The human fell. The werewolf stepped on the severed limb hard, breaking the bone just to feel it snap. The werewolf carved up the rest of the body. Another human charged at the werewolf's sword and shield, blazing with the blinding light. A leap and the werewolf was behind the human. A lunge, a slashing of claws, and the human lay mauled on the floor at the werewolf's feet. Roar. One after another, they all fell at the werewolf's mercy. Then suddenly, a bolt struck the werewolf from above, drawing a wretched snarl. Another bolt. This one hit the werewolf's back. The angel had recovered enough to take flight. The werewolf snarled. The angel hovered above, glowing golden through the dirt and blood that caked her skin. She took the aim with a shaft of holy light. The werewolf vaulted upward, leaping through the air, slashing wildly at the glowing angel. The werewolf's claws struck first and then teeth. A snap and the tip of the angel's wing came away. A mouth of feathers, cartilaginous bone, and the angel's blood. The angel lost elevation. The werewolf leapt again, this time for the other wing, tore it full off the angel's body. The holy being plummeted from the sky. As the werewolf stalked toward the fallen angel, the angel struggled to her feet, scrambling back, limping, trying to run, trying to fly, failing. The werewolf pounced, tackling the angel to the ground. Teeth sank into soft flesh. The angel's cry melded harmoniously with the taste of its blood. The werewolf would never have Enough. Archmage Cord! The call drew the werewolf's attention. The werewolf turned hungry. A human dressed in armor and robes pointed a trembling sword at the werewolf. Arlen? The werewolf cocked her head to the side. The name the man had spoken felt wrong. It pierced her like a knife. The man lifted his hand, pointing at the werewolf's chest. Of all that is holy, it is you! The werewolf snarled, but her gaze was forced down. She saw the pendant that hung from a chain around her neck. Something tugged on the back of her mind. Avison. She snapped her jaws, averting her gaze. Her eyes landed on the ground, on the bodies. All around her were bodies, fallen Cathars, too many of them. She knew them all. Leighton, Reeves. Her mind burned. No. No! Oh, Arlen, what have you done? The werewolf turned on Rambert, her rage swelling. Why had he come to her? Why had he spoken? This was his fault. She raised her hackles and growled. He took a step back, but she was faster, lunging, slashing, her claws digging trenches into his cheek. He cried out, brandishing his sword at her, backing away. The blood bloomed red on his face. You monster! The werewolf howled in anguish, the truth tumbling through her mind, swelling, growing out of control until reality filled every last crevasse and threatened to break through her skull. Rembert raised his sword. May Avison forgive you. The werewolf did not recoil. The blade would be a mercy. Let it strike. She could take no more. The steel flashed, and the werewolf's mind cleaved. Quick break here. That part was actually a little bit hard on me, so let me get a quick drink. I actually am out of regular drinks, so I'm going to bust out my water here for a moment. Always make sure you have water when you're reading, especially dramatic readings. You need to make sure that your voice is in top notch. This also will be posted on YouTube, maybe in segments, I'm not sure, but I will post a link on Reddit, on Twitter, for people that missed the Twitch chat. But let me get a quick drink here. I hope people enjoyed the werewolf segment. That was actually an inspiration. I just read it and immediately thought to go straight into that voice. So I hope you really enjoyed that part. I think now we will get to the last segment of the story. Starting with many years later, and then we will end up in the present day, which will be the final story piece. But I'd like to thank the people that have been watching and listening so far. Pretty much been going through this 40 minutes, probably another 20 minutes, and then for the rest of the time I will be setting up Magic the Gathering Online and showing you my sealed stream. But I appreciate all the people that did show up, and especially the people that did follow today, which I will be thanking again later at the end of the stream. For a very long time after that, Arlen had believed Rembert. She had believed she was a monster, something so horrifying and terrible that even Avison couldn't save her. And then after that, for a very long time, she had been furious with the angel. Avison's blessing was supposed to have been stronger than the curse, but in the end it hadn't mattered that she was an archmage. Avison had failed her. The wards had failed her. Lycanthropy had won. She had a long time to think on these things. She had planeswalked that day, so long ago when her mind had cleaved. Rembert's sword had never struck her. Instead, she had been thrown off the world, away from the horrors she had committed, away from the body of Archmage Reeves at her feet, away from the broken, bloodied, lifeless angel Eulalie, away from the glint in Rembert's eyes. She had landed in a forest on another world. It had been impossible to measure the passage of time then. She hadn't wanted to. Time should not have passed for her. Her life should have ended. In a way, it had. The other world was like a purgatory. While there, she never once regained her human form. She remained a monster on the outside, but at the same time she could not escape her human mind and the memories it held of her deeds. The two parts of her ward, and her soul was caught in the crossfire. But in the end, Arlen had been grateful for it. It was this state of double life that had forced her to see the truth. She had been wrong to think that becoming an Archmage would change who she was, or what she was. From the very first, after the howls of the Mundronan werewolf pack had cursed her, she had looked outward, to wards, to prayers, to Avacyn. She had convinced herself so surely that the angel and the holy power of the church could fix her. But what she had missed was that she was not broken. Not in the way she thought. She was what she was, and she would always be. She was savage and wild, a predator, but she was also good and true, a protector. She could not make one part of her disappear. She could not run away from half of her essence. She had to be both. She had to trust herself to be whole. Her salvation was never something she should have asked from the angel Avacyn. It was to her. It took many years, but finally Arlen returned to Innistrad, trusting herself to set foot once more on the world she had left behind. That moment was the moment she truly gained control of her powers and of herself. Her transformations were easy now, under her control. Her mind was always her own, but it was augmented by the wild power of her physical form. She was no longer a husk. She was no longer pretending, hiding. She was everything she was meant to be. Arlen trod over the wet earth, her nose exceptionally sensitive even in her human form, picking up on the familiar scents that linked to memories. Memories too numerous to count, all threatening to draw tears for the potency of heartache they wrested from her gut. It was the first time she had set foot on Elgod grounds in years. She had expected that the first step would be the hardest, but it was the next 100, those that carried her to Archmage Rembert's door, that proved nearly impossible. She had thought she was ready. She had faced all the others. She had visited the graves, Reeves, Laytons, all of them. She had prayed in Avacyn's churches across Nephalia, sending litanies of confessions and reparations. She had spoken to the angels, looked into their eyes, admitted her acts, and stood in their shadows to be judged. Rembert wasn't the only one who remained. She held up her fist to knock on the door of his chamber, but she didn't have to. His scent reached her nose an instant before his heavy hand fell on her shoulder. She spun around to face the aging Archmage. "How dare you!" Rembert was holding up a glowing ward. He had built protections against her. Arlen's heart twisted in agony. This was the same man who had believed in her, in the goodness of her soul, so completely before. Now she would not be surprised to learn that she didn't think she had a soul at all. "How dare you set foot here on this holy ground?" "Please, Archmage Rembert, You monster! You murderous beast!" He tossed the ward at her chest and spat at her feet. Arlen recoiled. "Please," she tried again. "I know what you must feel. I know what I did. There is no way to make the past right. But I'm not what I was then. Now I'm able to use what I have for good. I want to use that here with the Goldnight. I want to help. I am in control." "Ha!" Rembert drew his holy sword. "Control is a lie you tell so you can live with yourself when you are like this." He waved his sword, indicating her human form. But even now, even as you stand in that falsified flesh, you are a monster. You will always be a monster. "I may be a werewolf, but I am not a monster." Arlen held her ground, though he leaned closer with his blade, which was now aglow. "I am a Goldnight, and I always will be. You said as much yourself." Rembert lunged for her, his palm colliding with her shoulder, launching her back against the door. He pressed the side of his blade to her neck. Arlen refused to fight back. She would not allow him to push her toward a savagery. "Whatever I said to you before I knew what you were, when you concealed the truth from me, you cannot use it against me now. You are not a Goldnight, Arlen Cord. You never were." Arlen held Rembert's gaze. She could say nothing. The cloud of emotions that had choked back her words so many years ago had returned now to do the same. But this time the cloth had sharp edges, and they needled her like the devil's fingers, poking the inside of her throat and stabbing the backs of her eyes. All at once Rembert broke their shared gaze. He let out a heaving sigh and stepped back. "Get out!" He pointed down the hall, but averted his eyes, looking at the floor. "Leave these grounds and never come back. If I ever see you again, I will strike you down." Arlen hailed to speak, but Rembert's voice, thick with holy power, stifled her words. "Get out!" Last part. I thank everybody for listening to the story so far. This is the last part of the story, and then I'll be finished. After this, I will set up my Magic the Gathering setup real quick, so that way you can watch me play some Magic the Gathering online. I'm going to be doing some sealed Shadows over Innistrad. I haven't opened any of the packs yet, so you guys can see exactly what I opened, and watch me build the deck with some music. I'll have some video game music from your Earth playing in the background as well. Stuff on random. But for now, the present day. Arlen had attempted retreat. She had not wanted to engage, but Rembert didn't leave that as an option. She was surrounded, backed against the edge of the gorge, Cathars on all sides and Rembert before her, his thick branch raised over his head. "I warned you." He heaved the words at her, each one a heavy blow. His blunt weapon would come next. Arlen braced herself. She could withstand more blows than he could know, and she would not allow him to drive her away when there was a mad angel so near. As though beckoned, the mad angel swooped down from behind the Cathars. Arlen couldn't warn them fast enough. She couldn't warn Rembert. The angel shrieked as it closed its bloody fingers around Rembert's arms and pulled him, gasping and wide-eyed, into the air. The other Cathars turned their weapons on the angel, and Arlen rose up on her haunches, protective instincts taking control. "No! Fall in!" Rembert called to his Cathars, still in command as though he was dangling from the sky. "Don't turn your back on the monster! Kill the werewolf!" The Cathars appeared confused. Some shifted their aim back to Arlen, others remained trained on the mad angel. The angel cackled, not unlike the devil's, and her hands around Rembert's arms began to glow with a blood-tinged holy light. She would kill him there in the sky, snuff out his life with little effort. One of the Cathars loosed an arrow at the angel, but it fluttered uselessly over her shoulder. She snapped her teeth at the woman. "You'll be next, impure one!" Enough! This had gone on long enough. Summoning strength into her thick muscles, Arlen launched herself, leaping up over the heads of the staggering Cathars. She found purchase on the heel of the angel's boot and drove her teeth into the leather, pulling downward and thrashing to one side as she did. Excuse me, I'm very itchy, apparently, when I get reading. She found purchase on the heel of the angel's boot and drove her teeth into the leather, pulling downward and thrashing to one side as she did. The angel hit the ground with a resounding thud, Rembert tumbling from her grasp. Arlen wasted no time. She pounced atop the holy being, sinking her teeth into its flesh. She was all muscle and sinew now, driven by the wild power of the curse of lycanthropy, the curse that had become, for her, a blessing. The mad angel was dead in a matter of moments. Arlen turned, panting, to the Cathars, but they were not immediately behind her. They had collected at the edge of the gorge, some on their stomachs, reaching over the side. Rembert was nowhere in sight. Arlen's heart palpitated as she raced for the gorge, her mind already filling in what must have happened. She was not wrong. She assembled the facts of the scene even as her body acted. Rembert was wounded, lying on a twisted trunk of a dead tree. It would not hold his weight for long. He was too far down to reach from the edge, so she had already climbed out onto another broken trunk. Gripping the wet wood with her claws, she hung down, offering her paw to Rembert. He gasped at the sight of her, cowering, fear painting his expression. She stretched her paw further, silently begging him to take it. "Monster!" Rembert finally found his voice. "I will kill you!" A rumble rose up in Arlen's throat, but she swallowed it down. It was pain and fear that had brought those words to his lips. There was so very much pain between them. But there was also a bond. One of Goldnight. Always. Arlen closed her eyes and welcomed the transformation to her human form. She would not let the Archmage perish here tonight on account of fear. When she opened her eyes again, it was her human hand she saw reaching out before her. "Take my hand," she said to Rembert. Her eyes found hers. "You lied to me," Arlen swallowed. "I did." "You killed the others." "I did." "I cannot. I will not." "I am no longer slave to the curse," Arlen said. "I am free now to be a protector as I was meant to be. Please, you knew me once. Know me again." Rembert's eyes glistened behind tears as the trunk creaked under his weight. Arlen reached out anew. "Take my hand." Rembert steeled himself and lifted his arm. "Avacyn, help me," he whispered. "Avacyn is gone," Arlen said. "We must find strength in each other." And that is the end of the magic story. I hope you have enjoyed listening to it. What this basically means for the future of Eldritch Moon is that Arlen is actually going around assisting the Cathars with coming back together and reconciling. Now, whether or not she's actually working with the Order of Saint Traft, which is Thalia's group, which has Audric in them now, which Audric is actually one of my favorite characters. That all depends on whether or not we will see that in future stories. But for Arlen's sake, in this story, she is now working with the Cathars, at least this Cathar, and hopefully there will be some sort of beginnings of trust with the werewolves that can control their form, which she might be the only one of, but who knows, right? We have no idea exactly what's going to happen when Eldritch Moon lands, but for certain, Arlen Cord is on the side of good, and she's helping. Now, what I'm going to do after this is I will take a piece of this out and put it onto YouTube, so that way you can watch and or listen to the reading again. And I'll make sure to have that posted on Reddit, and I'll make sure to have that posted on Twitch, so you can find them there. I'll have it posted on the Facebook as well. But in just a moment, I'm actually going to get the Magic the Gathering set up, Magic the Gathering Online, for sealed. Won't need to display the cards on the Labcam 2 again, so we won't need that. But for to answer your question, Gomes Paladin, Ulrich might be the one everybody is thinking of. It's actually been the name that's been tossed around a lot. I'm not entirely sure if it will be Ulrich, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. It might be possible it's the leader of the Mendronan werewolf pack that Arlen's related to, so, I mean, they are the same colors, or should be the same colors of red and green, so we'll find out what that is right there. So, just give me, everybody, just a moment while I get set up. Thank everybody for coming to watch the reading, and I'll be back in just a moment. If you give me just a moment, I'm having issues getting it set up. The sound should be on. You should still be able to hear me. Just trying to make sure that the that Magic the Gathering online is working. It doesn't seem to be working. Does not seem... Yes, I know. This does not seem to want to show up. I'm trying to get this to work here. Let's do a window capture. That's all I see is black screen. That's not good. Well, just give me just a moment here. It's possible I have to restart the stream to be able to see it. So, just a moment. I will set things up to get it to work.